My name is Ethan Caldwell. I'm 24. And if you'd asked anyone in our tiny town of Brookridge a few months ago, they'd have told you I was the guy who had everything figured out. A stable job at the hardware store, a decent truck that didn't break down too often, parents who still loved each other after 3 decades, and a girlfriend, Hannah, who I'd been with since our early 20s, the girl everyone assumed I'd eventually marry. I used to believe that too. Now, I'm not even sure who I am anymore. The crazy part is that the worst night of my life didn't start like you'd expect. There wasn't thunder, no cinematic rainstorm pounding the streets, no dramatic argument. Just a quiet, ordinary evening in a quiet, ordinary town. The kind that lulls you into believing the world is stable, gentle, predictable. Brookridge isn't big. It's one of those places with a main street lined with old brick shops, a single movie theater that still shows films a month late, and a diner everyone pretends has the best coffee in the state, even though it tastes vaguely like burnt toast. When something happens here, it doesn't stay secret. It echoes, travels, crawls through conversations until it becomes a ghost that everyone recognizes. For the longest time, Hannah was my safe place. She was 23, soft-spoken but stubborn, with this laugh that made every bad day lighter. We'd built plans without even realizing it, talking about apartments we might rent, trips we'd one day afford, the kind of dog we'd eventually adopt. We weren't perfect, but in a town like Brookridge, we felt inevitable. So, when things first started feeling wrong, I didn't notice. Or maybe I didn't want to. It began with tiny shifts. Hannah getting busier than usual. Her phone suddenly becoming something she guarded instead of tossed on the couch. Her smile sometimes looking like it belonged to a version of herself that wasn't with me. I'd ask if everything was okay, and she'd brush it off with a kiss, a soft, just tired, or a joke that made me feel stupid for worrying. But I wasn't stupid. I was just scared. Looking back now, the signs were everywhere. I just didn't want to read them. Because when your heart is invested, your brain becomes an unreliable witness. You believe the best because the alternative means your world might break, and no one wants to watch themselves fall apart from the inside. At the time, I kept convincing myself it was stress. Her job, life, anything but betrayal. Brookridge might be small, but the weight of unspoken things here is massive. Secrets don't stay buried, they just wait. And one quiet evening, I realized the truth wasn't slowly approaching. It had already arrived, and I was the last one to see it. The night everything began unraveling didn't feel like a turning point at first. It felt inconvenient. Hannah texted me saying she couldn't make it to dinner with my parents because of a late shift. Normally that wouldn't have bothered me much, but lately everything about her excuses felt rehearsed, like lines from a script she'd practiced in the mirror. Still, I told myself to relax. People get busy. People change. Relationships adapt. Except sometimes they don't. Sometimes they fracture silently until the break becomes irreversible. My mother noticed before I did. Mothers always do. She didn't accuse Hannah of anything, didn't call her names or create drama. She just looked at me across the dinner table with that quiet, concerned expression that asks 1,000 questions without saying a word. My dad tried to keep things light, joking about football, weather, work, anything to avoid tension, but every time my phone buzzed, my hand shot to it like a reflex, desperate for reassurance that I didn't want to admit I needed. I didn't get reassurance. I got distance. Later that night, I drove home slower than usual, watching familiar streets blur past my windows, the empty park swings, the dim streetlights flickering, the closed storefronts that still somehow whispered life. Everything felt too calm, too still, like the town was holding its breath. Hannah's apartment was only a few minutes away, and before I even realized what I was doing, I turned instead of going home. I told myself I just wanted to check on her. Maybe bring her something to eat. Maybe surprise her. Maybe prove to myself that all the dread in my stomach was just insecurity wearing a costume. Her building sat near the edge of town, old brick, aging stairwell, windows that rattled in strong wind. I parked, grabbed the takeout I'd impulsively picked up, and headed up the stairs quietly. I don't know why I was quiet. Maybe a part of me already knew that loud footsteps would shatter something fragile. I stopped outside her door. Laughter. Not Hannah's. A man. Deep. Comfortable. Confident. Like he belonged there. Then Hannah's voice followed. Softer, warmer than it had sounded with me in weeks. The kind of soft that comes from safety, affection, intimacy. Something inside my chest twisted. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was denial. Maybe it's a cousin. Maybe a coworker. Maybe someone visiting. Maybe I misunderstood. I lifted my hand to knock and froze when I heard it. Her saying his name. Liam. A name I'd never heard before. A name spoken with tenderness that used to belong to me. My hand dropped. The takeout bag slipped from my fingers. My world tilted on its axis in a silent hallway where only I seemed to be falling. I didn't knock. I just stood there, listening to the life I thought I had collapsing behind a thin apartment door. And for the first time, I understood what true fear feels like. Fear doesn't always come in screams or panic. Sometimes it arrives like numbness, like your brain wrapping your heart in bubble wrap so it doesn't explode immediately. I backed away from Hannah's door slowly, every movement feeling disconnected from reality, like I was a spectator in my own life. The hallway stretched endlessly. My lungs forgot how to work. The laughter inside kept echoing in my head, replaying like a cruel soundtrack. I didn't confront them. I didn't kick down the door. I didn't create a dramatic scene like movies teach you to. I left. Cowardly? Maybe. Survival? Definitely. I walked down the stairs stiffly, ignoring the crushed takeout at my feet, ignoring the part of me screaming to go back and demand answers. Outside, the night air hit me like cold water, but it didn't wake me up. My body was present. My mind wasn't. I sat in my truck for nearly half an hour, staring at the building, watching shadows move past her curtains. Every shadow felt like betrayal carving deeper into me. I finally drove home, but nothing felt familiar anymore. My bed felt wrong. The silence felt hostile. My thoughts spiraled. Who is Liam? How long has this been happening? How many times did she lie to my face? Was I boring? Not enough? Stupid? The worst part? A small voice whispered, maybe you deserved it. Morning didn't bring clarity. It brought rumors. This is Brookridge. Secrets don't live long here. I walked into work and felt eyes on me. Heard whispers hush when I approached. My coworker, Mark, avoided eye contact like guilt was contagious. When I finally cornered him, his hesitation told me everything before his words did. Ethan, man, I thought you knew. Knew what? Hannah. Liam. Weeks. Seen together. People talking. I felt like the whole town had been watching my house burn while I slept inside. That night, something inside me shifted from pain to necessity. I couldn't live in half-truths anymore. I needed to hear it from her. I needed to see her face when she destroyed me. So I drove back to her apartment. And this time, I knocked. Hannah answered the door wearing the same sweatshirt she'd worn on evenings we spent tangled on her couch watching bad movies. Seeing something so familiar wrapped around someone so unfamiliar broke something sharp inside me. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Surprise. Then guilt. Then fear. Ethan, what are you doing here? Her voice trembled, which meant she knew. I needed to talk, I said, and my own voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded older, tired, worn down by truth. She hesitated before letting me in. That hesitation hurt almost as much as everything else. The apartment looked the same, but it felt different, like it no longer belonged to a life I recognized. I scanned the room automatically, searching for evidence of him, like pain needs validation. There wasn't anything obvious. But betrayal doesn't always leave physical messes. Sometimes it's invisible, rotting everything silently. We sat, distance between us that never existed before. Who is Liam? She flinched like I'd struck her. Silence stretched long enough to break hope entirely. Her eyes glossed with tears, but I didn't feel compassion. Tears didn't mean innocence. Tears meant consequences. He's someone from work, she whispered. It just happened. No, it didn't just happen, I snapped. Accidents don't last weeks. Accidents don't laugh together behind closed doors. Accidents don't know each other's names like that. She cried harder. I didn't soften. Finally, the truth came out. Slow, cowardly, fragmented. She'd felt unfulfilled, confused, curious what else was out there. She wanted validation. She didn't want to hurt me, but didn't want to lose the attention either. Liam was exciting. He made her feel alive. Every sentence was another blade. So I wasn't enough? I said quietly. That's not what I meant. It's what you chose. Silence again. Then I asked the question I dreaded most. Do you love him? Her pause was short. Too short. I don't know. Which meant, Yes, enough to risk everything. Something inside me went still. Not broken, not bleeding, just gone. I stood. This is me leaving, I said. Not because I'm weak. Because I deserve better than being someone's backup plan. She grabbed my wrist, begged, apologized, promised confusion, swore it didn't mean what I think it did. It meant exactly what I thought. I pulled away, walked out, didn't look back. But the pain followed. And Brookridge was waiting. If heartbreak is an explosion, the aftermath is the slow collapse. The next days felt unreal, like I was living underwater while everyone else breathed air. Hannah tried calling, texting, apologizing. I ignored everything. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it hurt too much to let her voice in again. The town didn't help. Brookridge is built from routine. Same grocery aisle faces, same bar stools, same familiar nods. Except now every familiar face carried knowledge. Sympathy, curiosity, pity. I became that guy. The one whose girlfriend cheated. The story people whispered over coffee. I stopped going out unless I had to. Work. Home. That was it. Even sleep didn't save me. My mind replayed conversations, fake memories, rewrites of moments where maybe, if I'd been better, she wouldn't have cheated. That's the cruel part of betrayal. It makes the victim feel responsible for wounds they didn't cause. One evening, my best friend Noah showed up uninvited. No lecture. No cliches. He just sat with me, let silence exist without pressure. Finally, he said, "You didn't fail. She did." Simple words. Necessary. Painful. Healing in slow motion. But grief isn't linear. Some days I felt strong, angry, clear. Others I felt like a child abandoned in a burning building. The hardest part wasn't losing Hannah. It was losing the version of me that believed love guaranteed safety. Weeks passed. Rumors slowed. Calls stopped. Life didn't fix itself, but it kept going. And I wasn't done breaking yet. Because in small towns, old wounds rarely stay closed. Especially when the person who opened them isn't finished with your story. Life has a cruel sense of timing. Just when I started convincing myself I was healing, Brookridge reminded me that closure isn't guaranteed. Sometimes it's challenged. It happened at the grocery store of all places. I was pushing a cart filled with nothing meaningful, frozen meals, cereal, things I didn't have to think about, when I heard a voice behind me. Ethan. My spine stiffened. I didn't need to turn to know who it was. Liam. He wasn't what I expected. He wasn't some movie villain with slick arrogance and a cruel grin. He looked ordinary. Mid-20s. Tall. Soft stubble. Calm eyes. The kind of guy you wouldn't hate unless he gave you a reason. Unfortunately, he had. "I just wanted to talk," he said. I hadn't spoken his name out loud yet. Hadn't given him the validation of existing in my story beyond the role of the other guy. Now he was standing there, breathing, human, unavoidably real. "What do you want?" I asked. He nodded like he expected anger and was relieved I didn't scream. I wanted to apologize. I didn't respond. He swallowed. "I knew she was with someone. She told me you two were complicated. Basically over." I believed her. That doesn't excuse it. I should have walked away. There was a strangling silence where my emotions didn't know what to do. Rage, sadness, violence, relief. None of them fully arrived. Instead, I felt exhaustion. Heavy, bone-deep exhaustion. "Did you love her?" I asked. He hesitated. Not as quickly as Hannah, but long enough. "I cared," he said, "but I don't think what we had was real. It was adrenaline. Escapism. Something she used to feel wanted. I just happened to be there." There it was, the most pathetic truth. I wasn't cheated on because I was unworthy. I was cheated on because she was lost. It didn't fix anything, but it shifted something. "She broke things in me," I said quietly. "Pieces I'm still trying to figure out if I can put back." He didn't defend himself. Didn't argue. Didn't try to justify. "I know," he said softly. "And I'm sorry." For a moment, we just stood there, two strangers tied together by someone else's choices. Then he added, almost awkwardly, "We're not together anymore." Somehow, that didn't surprise me. Drama built on guilt rarely survives honesty. I nodded once. "Good." He stepped back, almost relieved it was over. "I hope you find something better than all of this," he said, then left. I didn't forgive him, but I didn't hate him the way I expected either. Driving home, something strange settled in my chest. Not peace, but space. Space where pain had lived uninterrupted. Space felt dangerous. Space meant healing might actually be possible. And that terrified me almost as much as losing Hannah did. Because once pain fades, you're left with responsibility. Responsibility to rebuild yourself. And no one else can do it for you. Healing isn't cinematic. No montage. No inspirational soundtrack. Just slow days, heavy mornings, quiet victories no one applauds. I started taking longer drives after work. Not escaping, just breathing. Brookridge stretches into long open roads surrounded by fields that hum in summer heat and whisper in the wind at dusk. Out there, the town can't watch you. Out there, pain feels smaller. Noah stayed by my side like gravity. We drank cheap beer on my porch in long silences. He didn't force me to move on, didn't flood me with advice. Sometimes he'd say something simple like, "Proud of you for getting through today." That mattered more than any wisdom. Work became manageable again. People stopped whispering. A few apologized for gossiping. I accepted, not because they deserved forgiveness, but because carrying anger felt too heavy. But healing isn't forward motion, it loops. One night Hannah texted. It wasn't dramatic. Just, "Can we talk?" I stared at the message for 10 minutes. My chest tightened, my palms sweated, memories crashed in waves. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part craved answers. Closure isn't always healthy, but it's seductive. I typed back. Yes. One time. In person. We met at a quiet park just outside town. A place we'd once laughed under fairy lights during a festival, where now only memory kept company. She looked smaller somehow. Tired. Human in a way I hadn't allowed myself to see. "Thank you for coming," she said. I nodded. "This is your chance to say whatever you need to say. After this, it's done." She took a shaky breath. "I'm sorry. For all of it. For lying. For dragging you through my confusion. For making you feel like you weren't enough. You were. I just wasn't enough for myself." Tears rolled down, but I didn't feel the same rage as before. Just sadness for what could never be restored. I kept expecting life to feel bigger, she continued. Like there was some electric version of love I was missing. Liam made me feel new. Important. Seen. It wasn't real. It wasn't lasting. It was selfish. "I loved you," I said plainly. "I know," she whispered. "And I loved you too. Just not in the way you deserved." Silence. Honest silence. Painful. Necessary. "Do you want me to hate you?" I asked. "No," she breathed. "But I'd understand if you did." I shook my head slowly. I don't. I don't trust you. I don't want you back. But I don't hate you. That kind of hate would keep me tied to you forever. I need to be free." She cried. This time her tears didn't manipulate. They mourned. Mourned us. Mourned the versions of ourselves that once believed forever was simple. We talked for a while. Not about getting back together. Just about letting go. And when we finally stood up, we weren't lovers anymore. We weren't enemies. We were a closed chapter. And for the first time in months, my heart didn't feel like shattered glass. It felt like scar tissue. Still damaged. But stronger. Once Hannah was no longer a ghost tied to every emotion I felt, life opened up in subtle ways. Food tasted normal again. Sleep wasn't war. Music didn't hurt. I didn't feel embarrassed to exist. Healing didn't erase what happened. It gave me new context. I started noticing myself again. Not Hannah's boyfriend. Not the cheated-on guy. Just Ethan. I spent more time with my parents. Watched my dad teach me how to fix things I'd ignored before. My mom hugged me a bit longer than usual, but she eventually loosened the emotional grip when she realized I wasn't breaking anymore. I went back to the gym. Not to revenge and prove. Not to become some dramatic glow-up story. Just to build discipline, structure, proof that I could take care of myself. And then something unexpected happened. I met someone. Her name was Claire. 26. Worked at a small bookstore just outside town. We met because I kept going there for quiet. She teased me once. "You keep pretending to browse. Either you're avoiding someone, hiding from something, or you just really like standing in fiction." I laughed, genuinely laughed, which shocked me more than her comment. She was gentle without pitying me, curious without interrogating, kind without agenda. We didn't flirt at first. We talked. About books. Small towns. How life sometimes collapses just to rebuild differently. One afternoon, I mentioned I'd been through a bad breakup. She didn't pry. She just nodded like someone who knew what pain felt like and respected its privacy. Weeks passed before I realized I wasn't thinking of Hannah every day. Then there was a day I didn't think of her at all. That felt like a miracle. But healing is fragile. You don't trust it at first. I hesitated when Claire laughed at my jokes. Hesitated when she smiled too long. Hesitated when she asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. Fear whispered, what if it happens again? Strength whispered, and what if it doesn't? So I said yes. The coffee wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was easy, comfortable, honest. I told her a simplified truth, that I'd been hurt badly and I didn't rush anymore. She smiled softly. Good, she said. Rushing ruins things. We kept things slow. No forced closeness. No immediate dependency. For once, love, or whatever might become love, didn't feel like jumping off a cliff. It felt like learning to walk again. And in that quiet, steady way, I realized I wasn't rebuilding the old version of myself. I was becoming someone new, someone wiser, someone braver, someone who knew his worth didn't depend on being chosen. But life always has one final test, and mine was coming. The test came unexpectedly, not from Hannah, not from Liam, not from gossip. It came from inside me. One evening, Claire and I were sitting in her shop after closing hours, soft music playing, warm lamplight painting the room in gold. She was talking about something funny her coworker did, laughing with that effortless warmth she always carried, and suddenly I felt it. Fear rising like a tide. Not because of her, because I cared. Deeply. And caring meant vulnerability. Her voice faded into background hum while my thoughts spiraled. What if I wasn't ready? What if I was just pretending to be healed? What if I broke her? What if history repeated itself and I shattered all over again? She noticed. Of course she did. You're quiet, she said softly. I swallowed. I'm scared. She didn't mock. Didn't dramatize. Didn't force reassurance. Of me, she asked gently. Of trusting again, I admitted. Silence followed. Not empty silence. Thoughtful silence. I'm not her, Claire said finally. And you're not who you were back then either. Simple truth. Strong truth. Scary truth. I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't Hannah. She wasn't adrenaline disguised as affection. She wasn't an escape from herself. She wasn't filling a void. She was present. And I realized healing wasn't supposed to erase fear. It was meant to teach you how to feel fear without surrendering to it. So I did something I hadn't done since before my world collapsed. I let myself feel hopeful. Weeks turned into months. We grew, not in fireworks, but in shared mornings, long talks, comfort, trust. I let her see my scars, and instead of trying to fix them, she respected them as part of my story. One afternoon, as we sat on the hood of my truck watching the sun sink behind Brookridge's fading skyline, she asked quietly, "Do you think you're happy now?" I thought carefully. Yes, I said, but not because life turned perfect. Because I didn't let the worst thing that happened to me decide who I get to be. She smiled like she understood completely, and I think she did. If you'd told the version of me standing outside Hannah's apartment months ago that I'd reached this point, he wouldn't have believed you. He'd think the world ended. He'd think betrayal defined him forever. But time didn't fix me. Courage did. Courage to hurt. Courage to face truth. Courage to let go. Courage to rebuild. Courage to trust again. Hannah eventually moved away. Liam blended back into town life. The whispers stopped. Brookridge continued. Same streets, same diner, same sunsets. But I wasn't the same. I'm not telling this story for sympathy. Not to villainize. Not to glorify pain. I'm telling it because heartbreak feels like the end until it isn't. Because being betrayed doesn't make you unlovable. Because someone else's failure doesn't define your worth. Because survival isn't just about breathing. It's about choosing to live again. If you're listening to this and you're where I was, sitting in a quiet room feeling like everything's stability depended on disappeared, hear this. You will not stay broken. The pain will teach you. The truth will free you. And one day you will laugh again without guilt, sleep again without nightmares, and love again without fear being the loudest voice in your head. I'm Ethan Caldwell. I lost the future I thought I had. And somehow, I found a better one.